Good morning, friends. Good morning, nation. Wow. Had the opportunity to text a few of my friends one in India and one in Africa here recently. And good morning, everybody else, friends, nations in the house of CCI. I can't forget you. We're running through the desert, or we're talking about this passage of Scripture, Egypt, desert, promised land. And I've been talking a little bit about the things we're learning in the desert also now, but what are we trying to do? The desert is a school where basically we're understanding who our Father is and what our Father has, so that we can understand in the end who we are and what we have, and consequently what we can do. Now, this is what is happening as they finish up their season in the desert. Now, a lot of people, as you and I know, weren't paying attention. But nevertheless, desert is the place where we're supposed to learn who the Father is and what we have, so that we can understand what we can do because of the resources. Or, remember the symbolisms we talked about? The promised land symbolizes life itself. What a fantastic thing. But in life, just like in the promised land, there are giants. Now, what is a giant? A giant is something that a human can't conquer in his own strength. That does not mean they can't be conquered. It just means humans don't have the ability to conquer it. Now, what is a good example of a giant? Well, sickness could be a giant. Cancer could be a giant. AIDS could be a giant. Just almost any number of things could be a giant. Now, the issue and the thing that you and I are supposed to understand is humans in their limited strength are difficult that they would conquer giants. And so what often happens in the promised land, instead of you becoming a victor and a giant conqueror and a walled city conqueror, what often happens is that you become a victim. And so these things are redefining you instead of you redefining them. And this is exactly what we see as they come up to the promised land. Now, briefly, they send 12 spies into the promised land to see if everything was the way the Lord had told them. Of course, God can't lie. Of course, it'd be the way that God told them. So they went in and they spied out 12. These 12 spies were the 12 leaders of the nation. In other words, the equivalent of these guys would be a bunch of people who have master's and doctor's degrees who are great leaders in their society. And so this is who has been sent in to spy out the land. So they go in, they check it out, and they come back. And this is what they said. Everything that God told us about this land is true. Well, of course, everything God said. It's a land that the Lord sends the rain. In other words, it's productive. It's a land that is so productive, it's like it flows with milk and honey. An alliteration, but hey, a really good one, and it's used several times. In other words, a place of wonderful blessing, a place of wonderful prosperity. If you remember, the Lord had told them that he was going to give 7 nations to them. In other words, that they would overcome these 7 nations, and they would basically inherit everything. In other words, they would take over everything that these 7 nations had, which would be all their productive systems and apparatuses and stuff, if we would put it in the context today. So what an amazing thing. So they go in and they spy out everything. They even bring back some grapes, a cluster of grapes. The cluster of grapes is so big that they had to carry it on a pole between 2 men. So that gives you some idea of the productivity of the land at the time that God took them there. So they came back, and as they're giving their report to Moses, this is what they said. They said, everything God said about this place is fantastic. It's all true, everything he said. But then they added these phrases. Now, before I go into the phrases, I just want you to listen to me for a second. Everything they are saying theologically is correct. What? Exactly. Everything they are saying theologically is correct. But as this conversation progresses, these people who are right theologically are not going to be able to possess what God has already given them. Why will they not be able to possess it? How? Here's a great question. How can you be totally correct theologically and still not possess what God has given you. Selah, Selah, Selah. Pause and think on that. Hey, I really hope you're enjoying this stuff. I know I am enjoying sharing it. Sometimes it's difficult to keep it so condensed. But thank you for following us on the Facebooks. Thank you for making this very popular. I walked into a place the other day and a young lady recognized me. I thought that was so fantastic. So if you'll just put a like, it'll go to all your friends and it'll follow me. Send it to your friends. And we're going to keep going down the road here and sharing these capsules of powerful truths that unlock things as we go to them. Can you be right theologically and not possess what God has for you? Think on that.